The war was almost over when Ned Stark reached the Tower of Joy. The sun was setting, painting the sky red and gold like blood and fire. 6 of his closest men stood with him, swords in hand. Inside the tower, he knew Lyanna was waiting, dying. But he didn't know the full truth until he saw her pale face, soaked in sweat, her hands weak, holding a newborn child. She whispered just one name, one truth. His name is Aegon Targaryen, Rhaegar's son. Promise me, Ned. In that moment, Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, the most honorable man in Westeros, felt something crack inside him. He had always believed in duty. He had always followed the law. But now, the law would mean death for this innocent baby. Robert Baratheon, his oldest friend, was burning mad with hate. He had crushed Rhaegar in battle. He wanted every last Targaryen dead. If Robert ever found out about the boy, Ned couldn't let that happen. Not to Lyanna's son, not to a baby who had done no wrong. So he lied. The first of many lies. He told his men the baby had died with Lyanna. He told them the child didn't survive. Then when they buried her under the rocks and snow, he held the living child close and whispered, "You will not die today. Not if I have to betray everything I believe in." He sent his men ahead and took a different path home. For weeks, he wandered across the torn kingdoms, hiding the boy from both friend and foe. He changed his name, Jon Snow, claiming him as his own bastard to protect the truth. But deep inside, Ned felt the weight of the betrayal. Not just to Robert, but to his own soul. He was no longer just Ned Stark, the loyal friend and soldier. He was now a man with a dangerous secret, one that could tear the 7 kingdoms apart. When Ned finally returned to Winterfell, he found his wife Catelyn waiting. She looked confused when she saw the baby. Hurt, angry. She had waited for him. For months, afraid he might never return, only for him to bring back a child that wasn't hers. "He's mine," Ned said, keeping his face cold, hiding everything. "His mother is dead." That was the second lie, and Catelyn believed it, or at least pretended to. But her heart never softened toward the child. Jon grew up in Winterfell, fed and clothed, but always kept at a distance. He never knew who he really was. Ned never told him, never told anyone. Only Howland Reed, the last man alive who knew the truth, kept the secret with him. Years passed. The kingdom moved on. Robert sat on the Iron Throne, fat and loud, drinking and hunting, believing the war was won. He trusted Ned, loved him like a brother, never once questioned his honor, but secrets have a way of creeping back, especially ones born in blood and fire. And far to the south, in King's Landing, whispers began to rise. Whispers of dragons, of old bloodlines, of bastards who were not really bastards. Ned Stark thought he had saved a child, but what if, in doing so, he had just started another war? Years passed, and Jon Snow grew into a quiet boy with dark hair and thoughtful eyes. He was not like Robb, who was bold and proud, nor like Bran, who always dreamed of climbing high towers. Jon was different, a shadow that walked among the light, always on the edge of things, never quite belonging. He didn't know why, but he felt it in every cold glance from Lady Catelyn, in every feast where he sat one chair too far from Lord Stark, in every word never said. Ned Stark watched him from afar, heart heavy. He had saved the boy's life, but at what cost? His marriage had suffered. His honor had become a mask. Every time Jon called him father, it stung a little more. Because he wasn't Jon's father. He was his uncle. And the boy deserved to know who he really was, a Targaryen, the blood of dragons, but he couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not while Robert still sat on the throne. Robert Baratheon hadn't changed much since the rebellion. He was heavier now, louder, drinking more than he used to, sleeping with whoever would have him, and swinging his warhammer only when drunk enough to pretend he was still the man who killed Rhaegar. But he still loved Ned, still trusted him with his life. And that trust made Ned sick. One winter's night, news came from across the sea. Viserys Targaryen had married his sister to a Dothraki warlord. Robert roared with rage, smashing his wine goblet against the stone wall of the great hall in King's Landing. "They'll come for the throne," he said, red-faced. "The dragons are stirring, Ned. We must crush them before they grow wings." Ned said nothing at first. His heart raced, his palms sweated. He thought of Jon. He thought of Robert ordering his men to kill Rhaegar's children during the sack of King's Landing. He remembered Elia Martell's screams. "I won't be part of murder," Ned said finally. His voice was low but firm. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Murder? It's war. And war doesn't care if the enemy is 10 years old or an unborn child." It was the first time they truly fought, and it wouldn't be the last. Whispers started to spread. Varys, the spider, master of whispers, had begun to look more closely at Jon Snow. He had eyes in Winterfell after all. He knew things, too many things. One day he spoke softly to Littlefinger. "They say the boy has the Stark look," Varys whispered, "but his mother's eyes were violet. Or so I've heard." Petyr Baelish smiled like a man watching a match catch flame. "Secrets are like wildfire, my friend. So easy to spread, and so hard to stop." In Winterfell, Jon turned 14. He stood on the training grounds with Robb, swords clashing, sweat on his brow. He was fast, stronger than most boys, and quicker with a blade than even Theon Greyjoy, who often looked at Jon with both jealousy and scorn. But Jon was growing restless. He asked questions about his mother, about who he really was. Ned always gave the same answer. "She was a common girl. She died when you were born. That's all there is." But Jon didn't believe him anymore. Then, one cold day, a raven came to Winterfell. It bore a message with the royal seal. King Robert was coming north. Catelyn read the letter with tight lips. "Why now?" she asked. "After all these years?" Ned already knew the answer. Robert wanted to make him Hand of the King. He wanted to pull him south, into the court, into the lies, into the heat of power. And Ned didn't want to go. But he also knew this visit would bring danger. If Robert came face to face with Jon, if he saw something, a look, a memory of Rhaegar in the boy's eyes, it could ruin everything. All it would take was one bad glance, one drunken thought. That night, Ned stood alone in the Godswood, staring at the heart tree as snow fell gently on the old stones. "I've protected you this long," he whispered to the night, "but how much longer can I keep the wolves at bay?" He didn't know that Jon was watching him from behind the trees, quiet as a shadow, and for the first time, Jon saw something in Lord Stark's eyes that he didn't understand. Fear. The king arrived like a storm. Horns blaring, banners flapping, wheels grinding against the snow-covered stones of Winterfell. His procession stretched far behind him, a river of gold and crimson cloaks, proud knights and sharp-eyed guards, like a parade of war that refused to end. Robert Baratheon hadn't aged well. He descended from his horse with a grunt, his massive gut pressing against the leather of his royal tunic, his black beard dusted with grey. But the fire in his eyes still burned, the same fire that had once lit up battlefields. When he saw Ned, his face broke into a grin, arms wide, voice booming. "God, you got old, Ned." "You too," Ned replied, though his smile was thin. They embraced like brothers, but it was not the same. Not anymore. Behind Robert came his queen, Cersei Lannister, cold as the snow underfoot, and beside her Jaime the Kingslayer, his golden hair shining like a lion's mane. And trailing not far behind them were the royal children, Joffrey, arrogant already at 12, Myrcella, sweet-faced, and Tommen, still too young to know the poison in his own blood. As the feast was prepared, the halls of Winterfell filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of wine cups. Robert drank heavily, roaring with stories of their youth, tales of whores and battles and old glories. But Ned sat still, always watching, because in the shadows of the hall, Jon Snow was there, dressed modestly, eyes quiet but sharp, listening. He knew he didn't belong at the high table, but Robb had pulled him up beside him anyway. Jon glanced once at the king, curious, and Robert saw him. The king's eyes lingered, just a second too long. His voice trailed off as he stared at the boy with dark hair and a brooding look far too familiar. "Who's the bastard?" Robert finally asked, pointing with his cup. Ned's heart slammed in his chest. "My son," he said quickly. "Born in the south during the war." Cersei's eyes narrowed. Jaime smirked. But Robert only laughed, slapping Ned on the back. "You old dog. I knew you had it in you." But that moment shook something in Ned. He saw it in Varys's eyes later, when the eunuch whispered to Maester Pycelle behind a velvet curtain. He saw it in Cersei's cold glance, how she watched Jon like a hawk eyeing prey. Later that night in Ned's chambers, Robert leaned heavily on wine and memory. "You remember Rhaegar?" he said suddenly. Ned froze. "He died easy. Didn't expect it. One hit." Ruby scattered like rain. Bastard had no idea what real strength was. "He was a good fighter," Ned said carefully. Robert snorted. "He was a Targaryen. They think they're gods. But we crushed them, burned their castles, broke their line." Then more softly, almost as a question, "You didn't spare any of them, did you?" Ned didn't answer right away. His hand gripped the goblet tight. "I killed who I had to," he said at last, but Robert wasn't drunk enough to miss the hesitation. The next morning, as Winterfell stirred under a thin layer of frost, Jon stood by the stables. He felt restless. Something about the king's visit made him feel like a ghost in his own home. That night's feast had left him cold, like he'd been measured and judged by people he didn't understand. A voice broke through his thoughts. "You're Ned Stark's bastard." It was Joffrey, with his golden hair and smug smirk. Behind him stood the Hound, grim-faced. Jon turned slowly. "I am." Joffrey stepped closer, cruel curiosity in his eyes. "Funny, you don't look like him." The Hound watched silently. Jon said nothing, jaw clenched. Joffrey leaned in, whispering low. "My mother says bastards should know their place." Jon didn't answer. He just stared, but something shifted inside him. A quiet rage. A question. Who am I, really? That night, he stood once more in the Godswood. He didn't know Ned was watching from behind the trees. Jon whispered to the heart tree, "I want to know the truth. Whoever she was, my mother. Why won't he tell me?" And Ned, standing in the dark, realized something. The time to keep secrets was ending. The past was no longer staying buried. And if he didn't act soon, Robert would find the truth first. And if that happened, Jon Snow wouldn't live to see another winter. The wind howled through Winterfell that night, colder than it had been in weeks. The kind of cold that slipped through cracks and crept into bones, as if even the gods were warning of what was coming. Ned Stark sat alone in his solar, the fire crackling beside him, casting shadows on the stone walls. A small chest lay open on the table before him. Inside it, wrapped in old silk, was the only proof of Jon Snow's true blood. Rhaegar's signet ring, silver and black, a ruby in the center that gleamed like a drop of blood in the firelight. He picked it up slowly, staring at the dragon symbol engraved on the surface. "Promise me, Ned." Lyanna's voice echoed in his memory again. It had never stopped. He had kept that promise for 14 years. But now Robert was here, and the look in the king's eyes when he saw Jon, it haunted him. Robert might be drunk, careless and bloated with power, but he had not forgotten the Targaryens. And if he ever discovered the truth, there would be no mercy. Not even for the boy Ned had raised as a son. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Maester Luwin. "My lord," he said gently, "the Queen's men have been speaking with your household. They ask questions about your bastard." Ned tensed. "What kind of questions?" "Where he came from, who his mother might be. Some even ask why he was never fostered elsewhere like most noble bastards are." Ned's hands curled into fists. Cersei was testing the waters. He had no doubt Varys had fed her rumors. half-truths meant to stir suspicion. She was too clever not to sense the danger. She won't let it go, Ned said quietly. No, Lewin replied, and neither will the boy. He asks about his mother more often these days. After the Meister left, Ned went to the yard. John was practicing with Robb, wooden swords clashing under Sir Roderick's watchful eye. The other boys laughed and cheered, but John fought silently, his face hard, his swings sharp with frustration. He was no longer just training, he was trying to prove something. After the session, Ned caught him alone near the kennels. A ghost, John's direwolf, padded at his side like a silent shadow. "I want to speak with you," Ned said. John hesitated. "Am I in trouble?" "No," Ned said, "but we need to talk. Walk with me." They walked through the godswood, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The trees stood silent, red leaves trembling as if they too listened. "You've grown," Ned said after a long silence. "Faster than I expected." John glanced at him. "So has my doubt." Ned looked at the boy, the young man, standing beside him. John's eyes were sharper now, more knowing. "He couldn't be shielded forever. I know you've asked about your mother." "I have the right to know," John said quietly. "You tell me I'm your son, but you won't tell me anything else." "Who was she? Was she lowborn, dead? A secret lover?" Ned stopped walking. The words came hard. "She was someone I loved, but she died giving birth to you. Then why does Lady Stark hate me, like I stole something from her?" Ned didn't answer. "I'm not stupid," John said, his voice bitter now. "I see the way people look at me. I don't belong. Even Robb gets to be a Stark. I'm just Snow, a name for bastards. No lands, no future. Just a reminder of something no one wants to talk about." "You are not unwanted," Ned said. But even as he said it, he realized how hollow it sounded. Actions spoke louder than words, and John had lived in the shadows too long. Then before he could stop himself, Ned said, "There is more to your birth than you know. But I made a promise to keep it hidden. Not because I'm ashamed, but because the truth would put your life in danger." John stared at him. "What danger?" Ned's voice dropped. "The kind that sits on the Iron Throne. The kind that kills children in their cribs." John blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Ned almost said it. The words balanced on the edge of his lips like a blade ready to fall. "You are Aegon Targaryen. You are the rightful heir to the Iron Throne." But then a sound broke through the trees, hurried footsteps. It was Arya, breathless. "Father, Lord Varys just arrived from King's Landing. He says it's urgent." Ned's heart sank. He had waited too long. Varys stood in the great hall like a spider waiting in his web, wrapped in silks and secrets. His hands were folded politely, his smile as gentle as a prayer. But Ned Stark knew better than to trust softness from men like him. "I bring grave news, Lord Stark," Varys said quietly, once they were alone. "And it concerns the boy." Ned stiffened. "What boy?" "You know the one I mean." Varys stepped closer, voice like silk on steel. "Jon Snow, your son. He's no concern of yours. On the contrary," Varys said, "he has become a concern for many. Queen Cersei is observant. She notes how closely the boy resembles a certain prince long dead. A boy with no noble name, no mother, yet raised in a noble house. She smells fire beneath the snow." Ned's hand twitched near his sword belt. "What does she plan?" "For now, nothing, yet she is watching. But the king—" Varys hesitated, then added, "Robert is drunk most days, but even a drunk remembers his hate. He killed Rhaegar with his own hands. Do you truly believe he'd spare his son?" Ned turned away, jaw tight. "He's not a threat to the throne, but he is the rightful heir," Varys said softly. "And the realm does not tolerate dragons, no matter how small. You know this." Ned turned slowly. "Why warn me?" Varys gave a long sigh. "Because I serve the realm, and because I remember what happened to the last children who bore the name Targaryen. We were not kind to them." There was a long silence. "Do not let him leave Winterfell," Varys added, already turning to go. "Or you may return one day to find only a grave where he once stood." That night, Ned stood at the edge of Winterfell's ramparts, watching the stars scatter across the black sky. The cold bit through his cloak, but he barely felt it. His thoughts were tangled and sharp. Every thread pulled tighter around his heart. Catelyn joined him without a word, her presence as cold as the stone beneath them. "You never told me his mother's name," she said softly. He didn't respond. She stared out across the snow. "He doesn't belong here. You know it. He divides this family." Ned closed his eyes. "He is my blood, is he?" she asked. "Or is he someone else's burden you dragged here out of guilt?" He looked at her then, really looked. And for a moment, he wanted to tell her everything. About Lyanna, about Rhaegar, about the tower, the blood, the baby in her arms. But he couldn't. If she knew the truth, and if the wrong word slipped. "It doesn't matter," Ned said coldly. "He stays." In the morning, Jon was gone, not vanished, just missing from the castle grounds. Robb said he'd gone hunting alone beyond the Wolfswood. No guards, no warnings. Ghost had gone with him. Ned's heart dropped. The worst timing possible. He sent riders at once. Told Maester Luwin to keep the royal family inside the keep. And then, sword strapped to his back, he rode out himself. They found Jon before dusk near the edge of a frozen stream, arrow notched in his bow, Ghost at his side. He had just taken down a stag, a young one, golden brown with antlers sharp as knives. When he saw Ned, Jon stood up straight, proud. "I tracked him for 2 hours. Ned dismounted, his face pale. "Do you know what you've done?" Jon blinked, confused. "It was just a hunt." Ned walked toward him, eyes locked on the dead stag. Then slowly his eyes fell on something else, a white direwolf pup, barely alive, whimpering near the corpse of the stag. Blood and snow, a stag and a wolf. Both dead, together. The old gods were sending omens now. Ned looked at Jon, truly looked at him, at his Targaryen eyes hidden beneath the stark face, at the strength in his posture, the quiet fire in his soul. He realized then he couldn't protect Jon much longer by hiding him. Secrets would only kill him. "Jon," he said slowly, "when we return to Winterfell, we must talk. About who you really are." Jon stared at him, eyes wide. "Who I really am?" Ned nodded. "You deserve the truth, before someone else finds it first." But it was already too late. Far behind them, in Winterfell's halls, Queen Cersei was reading a letter passed quietly by Littlefinger's hand. Her eyes narrowed as she read the name, Aegon. Cersei Lannister read the letter again by candlelight, lips pressed tight, golden hair cascading over her shoulders like a lioness ready to strike. The name on the parchment echoed louder than the flames beside her, Aegon Targaryen. It wasn't a full confession. Littlefinger had been careful, but it was enough. The hints, the pattern, the secrecy around the bastard boy raised by the ever-so-honorable Ned Stark. A bastard who bore the look of the dragon prince her husband had killed in fury. A boy whose eyes held a quiet fire that didn't belong to the north. She folded the letter carefully. "I want eyes on the boy," she told Ser Jaime. "Every step he takes, every word he speaks. I want to know what he eats, where he sleeps, and who he speaks to." Jaime raised a brow. "He's what, 14? What could he possibly do?" "He could breathe fire," she said coldly. "And I won't wait to find out." Back in Winterfell, Jon rode in silence beside Lord Stark. The words, "who you really are," hung in his mind like a blade suspended above his heart. When they returned, the castle felt colder, not from snow but from suspicion. Cersei was watching, so were her guards. Even the servants seemed quieter. That night, before the words could finally be spoken, Ned was summoned to the Great Hall. Robert was waiting for him, red-faced and furious. "Why didn't you tell me?" The king roared. Ned stepped into the firelight, eyes narrowed.
"Tell you what?"
Robert threw a goblet of wine across the floor. "Don't lie to me, Ned, the boy, the bastard you brought back from the war. There are whispers, rumors, that he's not yours at all." Ned's fingers clenched at his side. "And who says this?" "Enough people, Cersei, Varys, even your own wife has doubts." "Gods, Ned! Did you lie to me? Did you hide a Targaryen in my realm?" The hall was deadly quiet. Ned stepped forward, voice low. "He is my blood." Robert's eyes gleamed with anger. "But is he Rhaegar's blood?" Ned didn't answer. Not yet. Because in his mind the battlefield played out. He saw Jon's head on a spike, saw fire and blood returning to the kingdom, saw innocent lives shattered by truth. He had wanted to tell Jon first. To tell him in private with care, not like this, not here, not before this drunk king and his scheming queen. He is no threat to you, Ned said. He's a boy. He's loyal to this house. To you, don't give me that, Robert spat. I've seen how the realm works. Targaryens breed madness. Look at his father. Look at his grandfather. Burn them all, they said. And now this boy lives under your roof. I raised him like my own, Ned said. He knows nothing of crowns or power. Cersei entered then, dressed in lion-colored velvet, calm and cold as frost. Then send him to the wall. The room turned silent. She smiled faintly. Let him take the black. He'll be safe there, and no one will ever whisper the name Targaryen again. No, Ned said sharply, but Robert was nodding. It's not a bad solution, Ned. It keeps the boy alive, keeps the peace, and keeps the realm from falling into another war. Ned's heart cracked. They were trying to push Jon into exile, into a cage of ice for a crime he never committed, for a bloodline he never asked for. He has a right to choose, Ned said. Cersei stepped closer, her eyes hard as diamonds. Then let him choose quickly, before others choose for him. That night Jon found his belongings packed. Robb was confused. Arya was furious. Bran didn't understand, but Jon saw it clearly now. Something had changed. Something had snapped loose in the halls of Winterfell. He found Ned in the Godswood, just as he had days before. They want me gone, Jon said. Why? Ned turned, face tired and worn. Because they're afraid of what you might become. Jon's jaw clenched. Tell me. Ned looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You're not my son, Jon. You're my sister's. Jon stepped back, breath catching. Your mother was Lyanna Stark, and your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. The world tilted. You're not Jon Snow, Ned whispered. You are Aegon Targaryen, last son of the Dragon Prince. And now, they know. The name echoed in Jon's mind, long after Ned left him alone in the Godswood. Aegon Targaryen. He sat beneath the weirwood tree until the moon was high, snow falling like ash around him. Ghost lay by his side, quiet and still, as if sensing that something had changed, something that could never be undone. He was no longer Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. That name had brought shame, cold stares and isolation. But at least it had been real. Now he wasn't even that. He was a prince of a house destroyed, son of a man every Northman had hated, and the blood of a line Robert Baratheon had sworn to wipe from the earth. His whole life had been a lie, and now that lie was coming to kill him. By dawn, ravens had flown. Cersei had made sure the court in King's Landing would know that Jon Snow might be a hidden Targaryen. The truth, or even the hint of it, was dangerous enough. King Robert had called it mercy when he offered the wall. Let him live, he had said, so long as he gives up all claim. But Jon saw it for what it really was, exile disguised as kindness. A cage with snow for walls, a place where truth could be buried forever beneath ice and silence. That morning Ned found him in the armory, packing what little he owned. You're really sending me, Jon said without looking up. I'm trying to protect you. Jon turned. You lied to me my whole life, told me my mother was no one, treated me like your shame, and now you want me to vanish beyond the wall like I never existed. Ned stepped forward, voice hard with guilt. If Robert finds out the full truth, he'll have your head. The wall is the only place he'll let you live. But it's not living, Jon said. It's running. You think I haven't run? Ned said, voice cracking. I betrayed my oldest friend. I buried the truth so deep it nearly killed me. I've lived every day in fear for you, for your life. And now you hate me for it. Jon looked away. He didn't want to hate Ned, but he did. A little. And he hated himself more for it. What would you have me do? Jon whispered. Ned didn't answer. Because he didn't know. That night, Jon stood at the gates of Winterfell, ready to ride north to the wall. Robb stood beside him, jaw tight, refusing to cry. Arya clung to his arm and wouldn't let go. Bran watched from above, confused and quiet. Even Lady Catelyn stood behind them, cold as ever. But her eyes were darker now, troubled. Ned approached, wrapped in his cloak. "Sword on his hip. There's still time," Jon said quietly. "I can disappear, go east, cross the narrow sea. You'd be hunted," Ned said. "Every assassin in Westeros would chase you down, so the wall is better." Jon asked. "To live and die in ice, forgotten?" Ned didn't answer. Instead, he handed Jon a letter, sealed, unopened. "When the time is right," Ned said, "read it. And remember who you are." Jon took the letter but said nothing. The gates opened. The wind howled through, but before Jon could ride out, a horn sounded from the top of the battlements. A rider, fast, urgent, message from King's Landing. The rider shouted, "The king is dead!" The world stopped. Ned turned sharply. "What?" "King Robert is dead, boar hunt. The queen now holds the city, and she names her son Joffrey king." The chill that swept over Winterfell was not from the snow. Ned's face went pale. He looked at Jon, not with fear now, but with urgency. "Everything's changed," Ned said. "If Cersei rules, she won't let you live. She'll kill anyone who threatens her son's throne. She already wanted me gone," Jon said, "and now she'll want you buried." Suddenly the wall didn't look like protection. It looked like a trap. "If you go," Ned said slowly, "she'll send men after you. And not just to exile you this time." Jon looked at the open gates, at the trees beyond, at the ravens circling the sky like vultures. "I'm done hiding," Jon said. "If she wants the last Targaryen dead, then maybe it's time she learns what that name still means." For most of his life, Jon Snow had walked the world with his head lowered, a bastard, a shadow, a boy with no name and no future. Now, as he stood in the heart of Winterfell, with the snow swirling around him and the name Aegon Targaryen burning in his chest, everything felt different. No more lies, no more pretending. He would not run to the wall like a coward. He would not hide behind oaths forged to silence bastards. He was not a bastard. He was a prince, and someone wanted that prince dead. Cersei Lannister had seized the throne with her boy King Joffrey. Robert was dead. Ned was the only true check against her power, and even now ravens from the south were whispering treason, calling for his arrest, naming him an enemy of the crown. Everything was moving fast, too fast. Inside the great hall of Winterfell, Ned stood with his bannermen, Robb beside him, tense and pale, and Catelyn stone-faced. Jon entered, his steps confident for the first time in his life. The lords stared. They had all heard the rumors that Ned Stark's bastard was not truly his, that the boy was of dragon's blood. Jon met their eyes. "All of them. I won't take the black," he said loud and clear. Lady Catelyn exhaled sharply. Robb looked stunned. Ned closed his eyes. "If I go to the wall, I disappear," Jon said. "But that doesn't stop Cersei. It doesn't stop her from sending knives after me. It just makes it easier for her to find me unarmed and unprotected. And what would you do instead?" Catelyn asked, her voice sharp. "Ride south with your crown of snow and fire? Challenge the queen? Proclaim yourself king?" "No," Jon said. "Not king, not now. I don't want the Iron Throne." "Then what do you want?" Ned asked softly. "To survive," Jon said. "To live long enough to make sure she never burns this realm to ashes in her thirst for power. And I want to know who I am, all of it. Not in half-truths, not behind some frozen wall." The hall fell quiet. Then Great Janumba stood from his chair. "The boy's got fire," he said, chuckling. "Maybe there really is dragon blood in him." "He's still Stark-raised," Robb added, stepping forward. "He bled with me, trained with me, fought with me. You want to kill him for his name." Jon looked at him grateful, but not everyone was pleased. Some lords muttered of Targaryens, of mad kings, of fire and rebellion. Others whispered that Ned Stark had betrayed Robert all those years ago by sparing the child. Ned finally raised his hand. "I lied," he said, quiet but clear. "To protect an innocent. To keep a promise to my sister as she lay dying. I broke my honor to save a child. If that is treason, so be it. You should have told us," one of the lords said coldly. "If I had," Ned replied, "you'd have buried him the next day." Silence followed. Then Maester Luwin entered the hall. Breathless. "A raven from King's Landing," he said. Queen Regent Cersei has named Eddard Stark a traitor. He is summoned to face justice, or war. The words hit like steel. She's moving fast, Ned muttered. She's trying to finish this before anyone has time to rise against her, Jon said. Including me? Robb's fist clenched. Then let her come. No, Ned said sharply. Not yet. We're not ready for war, but she is, Jon said. And she knows we're weak if we don't stand together. That night, Jon stood alone in the crypts beneath Winterfell. The statues of dead kings and lords stared down at him. He stopped at Lyanna's tomb. You died for him, he thought. And he never even knew you. He placed his hand on the stone. I will not let your son die in silence, he whispered. I will carry the name with pride. I will not be your brother's shame anymore. Behind him, Ned stepped out of the shadows. I was waiting for the right time, Ned said. There's no right time left, Jon replied. The war's coming, Ned nodded. Then we fight it together. Jon turned to him. You've spent your life trying to protect me by keeping me hidden. But that's not who I am anymore. Ned placed a hand on Jon's shoulder. Then show them who you are. Outside Winterfell the snow kept falling. But for the first time a spark burned beneath it, the flame of a dragon, hidden too long. And in the south, Cersei Lannister read her spy's newest report, her fingers tightening on the edge of the parchment. The boy refuses the wall. Stark prepares for war. The north stirs, she whispered to herself, voice as cold as winter. Then we kill them both.